Well, here we are in the galleries of the Philip J. Currie Dinosaur Museum, and this is the final step in the journey of a fossil from being excavated to making its way to the lab, to our collections, and finally out to the gallery. Now behind me we have a display of one of our dinosaurs, our Pachyrhinosaurus. Now if you look closely at this dinosaur, you may notice that it's actually a cast.
Now, a cast is nothing more than an identical copy of some kind of object, in this case a dinosaur fossil. And the reason that we exhibit casts in skeletal displays instead of real fossils all mounted together in a skeleton is because the real fossils tend to be a lot heavier and much more delicate than casts are, and we can sort of drill holes and bolts and things like that into casts and not have to worry. And it allows us to keep the real fossils back in the collections where they're safe and accessible to researchers.
Now in this case behind me are actual real fossils. So museums still exhibit these, but we try to keep them behind protective glass and whatnot to keep the fossils safe, and it makes it so that we can access them if need be for research a whole lot easier. Now you can see a lot of white patches in these fossils, and what that is usually some kind of plaster or sometimes clay, and it's used to help reconstruct the fossils, which basically means helping them to fill in the cracks and get put back together, because more often than not fossils are usually missing bits and pieces and can be badly damaged when we take them out of the ground. So filling them in makes it sort of one whole intact structure, and we often leave the plaster or clay or whatever it is we filled it in with white or whatever color it comes in, so that it illustrates the process that it takes to make these fossils whole again.
A question a lot of museums get is why they choose to display the objects or artifacts or fossils or what have you that they do. Now there's a lot of thought that goes into this, and it partly depends on what the museum has in their collections to show off and who it is putting the displays together. Now we often like to exhibit artifacts or fossils or any kind of display that tells an interesting story or illustrates something cool within the world of science or history or what have you. Now here you can see a couple of skulls of hadrosaur or duck-billed dinosaurs, and one of them is called a Corythosaurus. It's this hollow-crested dinosaur with that big sort of cassowary-shaped crest. And the other is this flat-headed Edmontosaurus. Now, hadrosaurs come in these two different varieties, the hollow-crested or flat-headed, sometimes solid-crested dinosaurs, and we show off these two because it illustrates the two different branches of the hadrosaur family tree.
Now some fossils are chosen to go on display because they're either very rare or very important to science and are particularly impressive to people who might want to see them. This example I have next to me is one such example. It's a specimen of a very common type of duck-billed dinosaur called Edmontosaurus, which is found all the way from Alaska to the United States. Now this particular fossil of Edmontosaurus, though, is very interesting. It was found covered with skin impressions, which showed us more information on what the animal's skin looked like, and it also was found with a fleshy, sort of rooster-like crest on top of its skull bones.
This Edmontosaurus preserves skin from the back of the neck and on top of the head where that crest is. We can tell that it had scales like most living reptiles do today. And along the neck, those scales were formed into larger, kind of oblong shapes, these raised ridges on the neck. And the scales on the crest were very, very small. And it might have even been the case that this crest was brightly colored in order to be used as some kind of display structure.
Now, some museums tend to be very general in what they exhibit and display all sorts of things, from cultural objects to artifacts to scientific specimens of all different sorts. At the Philip J. Currie Dinosaur Museum, we're a bit more specific in our mission as to what we study and exhibit. It tends to be dinosaurs from the late Cretaceous period from northwestern Alberta, particularly from the Grand Prairie region. Now this is so that people who live in this part of the country, in this part of the province, can come in and see all the different types of fossil animals that are found right in their immediate area. This is a unique time in Alberta's history where we have a museum dedicated to one particular spot of a certain province, dedicated to the ability for locals to come and appreciate the fossils from their own backyards. Now, so far in our video series, we've seen how laboratories in museums work a lot like workshops, and how collection spaces are a lot like libraries. Now, what about galleries? What are they like? Well, we want to pose that question to all of you. What do museum galleries mean to you specifically? They might be places to hang out and socialize with your friends, or to sit and appreciate some really cool fossil, or maybe to learn something that you never knew before. Maybe it's all of the above, maybe it's neither. We're interested to know what you think about museum galleries in this day and age. So comment below, send us an email, let us know what you think about galleries and where you'd like to see museums in the future go.